Hello and welcome back to Ruben Cut. Today's episode, the April Movie Roundup. This is where I'm going to just talk about all the big movies I saw in April slash March. March, April Roundup. I think. I just realized I could have also talked to you today about Kung Fu Panda 4. But I have literally nothing to say about Kung Fu Panda 4. I saw it. It was fine. That's all I have to say about it. So what will I be talking about if not Kung Fu Panda 4? Well, we're going to be talking about Godzilla X Kong, New Empire, Monkey Man, and Civil War. That's the order I saw them in, but it's not necessarily the order I'm going to talk about them in. Let us begin. First up, we got Godzilla X Kong, New Empire. And it's fine. It's fine. The story is there. The most interesting thing about the story is that they actually bothered to give so much of it to King Kong. King Kong's journey is like the most interesting part of the film. We see him adapting to his new home in Hollow Earth, which, by the way, was a theory about the world in the 1800s. So take that, flat Earth people. Where was I? Right. So most of the story is Kong here adapting to his new environment, and they fight some monsters. And over here we got Godzilla, who actually spends most of the movie just leveling up, just traveling around the world, absorbing the radiation from different monsters to make himself stronger for the final fight. The highlight in the movie, probably them destroying the Great Pyramids of Giza. Probably that. Probably that. It's also pretty amusing that Godzilla sleeps in the Roman Colosseum like he's some type of cat curling up in a box. How are the humans? They're there. They're fine, I guess. They have about the same level of depth or intrigue as any human character in, say, a Michael Bay or Roland Emmerich disaster movie. They're there. Do they matter more if I watch the Apple TV show? I don't know. I'm not watching the Apple TV show. Is this story more meaningful if you are? I honestly couldn't tell you. I honestly couldn't tell you because I don't have Apple TV. So at the end of the day, I guess I give it, like, if I was gonna give it a grade of some kind, I guess like a B minus. It's fine. Maybe some, if you wanted to go harder on it, I guess a C plus. But like at the end of the day, the movie delivers the only thing it's ever promised, which is monsters punching each other in the face. There are no real surprises. It's just, monsters punching each other in the face. If you went to this movie expecting more than monsters punching each other in the face, then I mean, that's kind of on you. That's kind of on you. Let's talk about Civil War now. Civil War is the one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Well, that's overselling it. The horror is existential more than anything else. However, what it is an extremely intense thrill ride. Now, some people have called this an action movie. I don't personally know if I would call it an action movie. There is certainly a lot of action in it. However, I will say that some people are out here talking about how it's the quote unquote best combat ever filmed on camera. And frankly, I'm getting the impression that that's just because, unlike most war movies, there's not an ungodly amount of horrific shaky cam. The film is very, since it is from the perspective of war journalists, very conscious of the images that it's trying to connect and doesn't pull any fucking Paul Greengrass bullshit on us, where it's just a mess of moving images. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Paul Greengrass, most overrated director in the history of cinema, who is not even that highly rated. But like, no, I think he sucks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, born franchise fans. He sucks. Your movies are unwatchable mishmash Ugh. Hate them. I actually had to stop watching the franchise after the second movie because it gave me a headache to look at. Hideous films. Hideous, hideous movies that Paul Greengrass makes. I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. The point is that the people who made this movie had a fucking tripod. And maybe just people think that that is all it takes to be the best combat ever filmed, because admittedly, people who film war scenes in a lot of movies certainly don't seem to know how to make them visible. So maybe that's fair. Maybe it is the best by default. That being said, like I was saying, let's get back to the story itself. The story follows 4 journalists. Lee Smith, played by Kirsten Dunst. Joel, played by Wagner Moura. Jessie, played by Kylie Spiney. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And Sammy, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson, who all do a fantastic job as the core central characters. I will say that I think this is the best performance I've seen by Kirsten Dunst. Now, to be fair, I don't watch a ton of Kirsten Dunst movies, so maybe this is just very impressive for me, having mostly seen her in Spider-Man. That being said, I think she does a great job here, and I think as basically our central protagonist, she's a brand character, and her sort of protege Jessie, played by, like I said, Kylie Spiney, I'm not sure, have a great dynamic as it goes out. I will say when I first started watching the movie, I assumed that Jessie's character was a child. Apparently, she is 23. But sort of like the mentor-mentee, begrudging mentor-mentee situation that they have going on, I think works really strongly for the film. I really liked these characters. Some people complained about the character development on these characters, and I have to say, I don't know what those people are talking about. I really got to know these people in this story. Is a lot of their character development and emotional connection to each other trauma bonding? Yes, but that's a believable thing for this scenario. The film, like I was saying, is from the perspective of war journalists. So I have to warn you, the film never gets into the politics. They are there to record the war, period. They don't really have a side. They are neutral. In fact, this is something that the film makes very clear to us. We get to experience the existential pain that they have, knowing that they are always only there to record, even if what they are doing is recording horrific things. It is not their role. It is not their role to judge. It is not their role to intervene. They, at numerous points, see innocent people either dying or being mistreated and understand that their position is not to intervene. This is a very intense movie that very much lays out exactly why you never want civil war to come to your country. This is not a thing you ever want to have happen. In fact, that's sort of the existential pain of the movie, is that Lee Smith, Kirsten Dunst's character, has a moment that's in some of the trailers where she mentions that all that time she spent covering wars in other countries, she thought she was sending a warning back home. Don't do this. And yet here she is, recording and documenting a war in her own country. Kirsten Dunst is also joined in the film by her scene-stealing husband, who has basically a glorified cameo in one of the most terrifying sequences in the film, where he basically plays a soldier that the journalists stumble on doing war crimes. And of course, he doesn't really just want to let him go after him and his boys have been, caught creating a mass grave where they're throwing lye on the dead bodies of men, women, and children. A lot of the imagery in this movie is intense. And not just, there's nothing in it where I was like, this is gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. And that's kind of what's alarming, There is quite a bit of very hard to look at imagery in this movie, but it's not exaggerated. It's very real. It's very real looking. The gore is neither cartoonishly unrealistic nor is it toned down for us. There are numerous scenes where we see strewn with bodies, and it looks very much like actual pictures from actual wars. The film is a lot to take in. The film is also a great example, though, of why I always say, and this is me getting political in an episode that I don't plan on being political, but this movie, I think, is a good reminder for people to understand why accelerationism is the most foolish concept around, because it doesn't work. Accelerationism leads to these kinds of outcomes. Just throwing that out there, people on the very far right and far left should both hear this. Accelerationism is dumb and part of how Hitler became president in Germany. You can't rely on people waking up once things get bad. And things tend to have to get real bad before anyone, actually does anything. And Civil War is about that. When things get so bad, people actually do something. Now, some people have complained that the alliance structure doesn't really make sense in the film, except that technically California joining forces with Texas, well, that seems like an unlikely alliance because of their different politics. You have to take into account, though, that they are the two states most likely to secede in real life, and they are also would be the most logical military advantage. They are the largest states with the largest populations. It is the only realistic scenario where ultimately they would team up against almost everyone else. Now there is also an alliance. There's also the Florida Alliance, and the not really so much talked about like Northwest Alliance place. Although there is a brief and comical reference to Portland Maoists. Oh, Portland. That is implied to be part of whatever shit's going on up there with Washington and whatnot. But it's the Western Forces, the Florida Alliance, and I forget what they call the whatever's going on with Oregon. Real quick edit. I actually looked up the map of the alliances, and it's actually a little bit more complicated than I described it. The Western Forces are actually the name of that Washington, Oregon, North Dakota, all those places up there. The Republic, how it actually is the Republic of California and the Republic of Texas are actually two separate independent countries who have formed an alliance to take down the United States. And then, of course, there is the Florida Alliance. Just thought I would clarify that. But it's all them versus the United States, which in this case is significantly fewer than 50 states. The film also makes it clear that, of course, once this war is over, the forces will probably turn on each other. And whether that's just Texas deciding that they don't want to deal with California shit, or if that means California and Texas go to war with Florida, who knows? The film is intense. Now, the whole thing is that Joel and Lee Smith, what they want to do is get to Washington before the Western forces crush the Capitol, because they want to interview the president before he is ultimately killed. Because everyone knows it's coming. America is going to fall. The United States will go down the path of being torn apart. The president, who is never named, is played by Nick Offerman. And while Nick Offerman is clearly doing some choices acting-wise that he is based off of Donald Trump, he is also not doing an impression of Donald Trump. He's merely doing a character who has some vague Donald Trump isms. The film also, however, makes some other references to the president to give him some other Donald Trump isms, like the fact that he apparently disbands the FBI prior to the Civil War, which, considering the Civil War broke out, was probably a mistake. The FBI was probably your best way to keep an eye on that, and now you're fucked. Do I recommend Civil War? I absolutely recommend Civil War. I would give Civil War an A-. Honestly, I can understand why some people will be put off by the film a sort of disconnected vibe. And by disconnected, I mean the fact that it doesn't dive heavily into the actual politics of the scenario. But in fairness, I think the film does this for two reasons. One of which is that it is from the perspective of these war journalists who are taking a non-political approach to it. The other reason, though, I think, is because the politics of a civil war ultimately this civil war, the politics are not really supposed to matter. You see, when we talk about the previous civil war, we have a clear moral thing in our mind because of slavery. But this film isn't going to let us off that easy. This film still asks the question, how can we stop this? How can you let this happen? And why do the Western forces seem to be on the right path? Yeah. At the end of the day, yeah, I gotta highly recommend Civil War. Although I will say it is not for the faint of heart. I thought the movie was brutal and intense from honestly the word go. It for me it hit and it did not slow down. I mean, there are some slow parts pacing wise, intentional. I'm not saying slow like bad, but overall, yeah, I have to give it to this one. Hats off to Civil War, one of Alex Garland's best films. And Alex Garland is a man who has yet to miss. Although to be fair, he doesn't just direct, he also writes. Let's talk about Monkey Man. Monkey Man. He's the movie I'm gonna recommend the highest here. I know I just gave Civil War an A-. But Monkey Man is the movie I have to tell you to go watch. This movie is a freight train. And by that I mean that's how hard it hits you. So what is Monkey Man? Well, Monkey Man, starring Dev Patel of Green Knight fame. If you haven't seen that, what the hell's wrong with you? Go see Green Knight. Good Lord. Is a martial arts revenge film. And the second one I've seen this year. And actually, this is the one I gotta give mad props to. First of all, it's a hell of a debut directing job. Dev Patel does a great job starring in and directing this. Thank you to Jordan Peele for making sure this came to America, and thank you to Universal Studios for taking the risk on it. This movie is 100% worth your time. Except, I should tell you, this movie is also not for the faint of heart. Not quite for the same reasons as Civil War, except also kind of for the same reasons, because it is crazy violent. Crazy violent. So what's it about? What is Monkey Man about? Well, honestly, I think there's some deeper stuff going on here that I just don't know enough about India to tell you, which is why I didn't do a fuller video. There are bound to be better videos out there giving you deeper analysis of this movie that I just can't give you. But I will say some things because this movie kicks ass. Movies kick ass. Obviously, the other movie I saw was a martial arts revenge film, was The Beekeeper. Oh, wait. I guess Roadhouse is also a martial arts revenge film. So I have seen 2 martial arts revenge films this recently. I guess I could have put Roadhouse in this movie, in this roundup as well, but I gave Roadhouse its own movie because it'll appear up here somewhere on YouTube anyways. Let's get back to Monkey Man. The point is Monkey Man is an action revenge martial arts film set against the backdrop of the poverty in India. You see, Monkey Man stars this kid who grows up to be this guy. And this guy is on a mission to avenge his mother, who was killed by the chief of police. Why did the chief of police kill his mom? Well, you see, there's also the super rich and powerful spiritual guru in India who is heavily connected to politics and, society in the most corrupt ways possible, who essentially had the police burn down his family's village and murder a bunch of people there. So he grows up to be Monkey Man. Now, the film is sort of tied into the legend of the Monkey King, which is a legend that is, there are many variations of in India and China, and is typically connected to Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, and like I said, I'm not an expert enough on India to tell you what the differences are in how they interpret the Monkey King, who I believe is called Hanuman. When we meet our Monkey King, Monkey Man, he is participating in underground sport fights, which are hosted by Charlton Copley, the only white guy in the movie, who I think is fast becoming the go-to. Hey, we need a creepy white guy to be surrounded by literally zero other white people. Who we got? We got Charlton Copley. Okay, put him in there. I like Charlton Copley a lot. He's most famous for his starring role in District 9. But he's also appeared in The A-Team and Beast and a bunch of other movies, including, what is it? Crossfire? No, not Crossfire. Free Fire. That one. Yeah. But anyways. Oh, and I'm pretty sure he's also in Hardcore Johnny. Whatever that first-person action movie is. Which we're going to get to that in a minute. But basically, his goal in life is to avenge his mother and kill these people. And at the start of the movie, he's got a plan, and he's going about the plan. I don't want to give too much of it away, but his plan goes south. And of course, his hero's journey sees him going through some changes, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But first, let's address some things. The action in this movie. So the action in this movie, I have no other words to describe it but kinetic. Like, the sense of movement in the movie is pretty fucking incredible. The action is also brutal and violent and bloody. There's a lot of blood. There's one kill in the movie in particular that made me go, oh, shit, right there in the theater, because it was, oh, yeah. The action, I don't know how really to describe the action, because it is unique. It is unique in terms of the action. There are some long shot action sequences, and some of the most impressive things about some of these long action sequences is that you might not notice that they're long takes because they're from the perspective of the camera, like moving. I don't know how to describe it, except to say that, like, Monkey Man feels like it's doing the thing that Paul Greengrass thinks he's doing. Like, the sense of movement with the camera. Now, the camera's a little bit shakier than I normally like. But for some reason, this movie hits the proper balance of making sure you can see what is happening, as along with the almost very kinetic movement of the camera itself. Often the camera will even represent a first-person perspective of one of the fighters in the situation, and then will, like, literally swing out of that to be not them anymore. It's very well done. It's very well done. Like, all the camera movement that is used in the action sequences is deliberate and doesn't just feel like some guy running around being like, oh God. This is average Paul Greengrass movie right here. Average Paul Greengrass movie. This is a fight scene in a Paul Greengrass movie. Nothing. Bullshit. But this movie somehow seems to do that without it becoming hideous nonsense to your eyeballs. And I gotta applaud that. I have to applaud that. Also, just another opportunity to shit on Paul Greengrass, who is, thank God he didn't get to make the Watchmen movie. Thank God. Because if this movie, every Paul Greengrass movie should come with a vomit bag. And every Paul Greengrass movie, someone should hand him a fucking tripod and say, hey, you may not have known this thing exists. Do you want to use it? Until he gets the idea. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't even be like, sometimes I just want to slap Paul Greengrass in the face and just be like, why? Why? Why do you hate our eyeballs? Sorry. Back to Monkey Man, which is good. I just need to talk about Paul Greengrass so you would understand the comparison that I'm making. This movie does what Paul Greengrass thinks his dumbass is doing and makes the camera a kinetic part of the action sequence. Now, I still prefer things be a little bit cleaner, but the movie is doing something unique here, and it's doing it as good as I think you can do it. I do have a criticism for one action sequence in the movie, which I'm going to get to in a minute, but I can't really properly describe that action sequence without telling you about the movie's awesome trans representation. Now, I'm familiar with the fact that trans people have a very different place in Indian culture than they do in American culture, and they have a long history of these trans people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that trans people are more accepted in Indian culture. My understanding is that there's still quite a bit of stigma attached to it. And the film itself even briefly touches on the violence against trans people. But the point is that you see, and this is kind of spoilery, so, if you don't want any minor spoilers, now's the time to just go see this fucking great movie. I give it an A. This is a solid A. It might even be an A+, but I gotta watch it again to tell you for sure. But anyways, so there's a point in his journey where he gets his plan works, and he makes his way to the moment of being able to kill the police chief. And it almost happens, but the police chief manages to wrestle the gun away from him, and they have this epic fight in the bathroom, and shit goes pretty sideways. And so he flees across the rooftops, and he gets shot by a guy, and he falls into the Ganges. I think I'm saying that right. The Ganges River, which the film, I need to specify this. The film makes India look gross. It's a film made by Indian people, and I think it's on purpose. They want to show us the poverty. The film is heavily about the poverty and sort of the class divide. The film wants us to know that. So its imagery of the Indian underworld is very in our face, very clear. But also, he falls into a disgusting river with a major gunshot wound. However, he is rescued from the Ganges River by a little, for lack of a better term, a little commune of trans women who I don't know the proper Indian term for what they call themselves, but the film itself does use the term trans women because most of the film is in English. And essentially, these trans women take him into their community where they nurse him back to health, and he trains in their sort of sanctuary. Not everyone who lives there is trans. There's also what appears to be there's probably an Indian term for this, but there's a gentleman there who appears to do drum-based comedy. Like I said, I assume there's some deeper Indian meaning that I'm not getting there. I'm sure there's a title for this type of person, but he lives in their community, and he does drum-based comedy. I don't know how else to describe what he is doing besides drum-based comedy. But he also uses his drumming to help Monkey Man train. And of course, this is of course all part of his hero's journey. And after that, it's just getting back to his opportunity to get revenge. Now, the one action sequence that I have to criticize in the film, which I still really enjoyed the scene, still had great action in it, but there is a weird disconnect about the choreography of that scene, because it's basically implied that two fights are happening in this area at the same time, and one of them is an army of a small band of trans women with sickles have come in here, and they are literally just slicing dudes up with these sickles. And meanwhile, on the other side of the room, in a strangely disconnected way, is him kung fuing a bunch of guys to death. I don't know the specific martial art he's actually doing. I just like saying kung fuing guys to death. So he's and like the thing is, these fights are taking place in the same room, but the film only occasionally sort of has the fights overlap. It almost feels like they're in different places at times. This is a minor complaint, to be honest, but like I did notice and feel it as an action movie connoisseur. That being said, like that's like the only real complaint I had the entire film. Like that's like right there. That's just why it's not getting an A+ at this current time. Just minor choreography issue. The film itself is fantastic. Honestly, I highly recommend Monkey Man. I recommend Monkey Man over Civil War, and I highly recommend Civil War. That being said, they're both very brutal, violent movies. These are not for everyone. But Civil War is also kind of important, and this movie just kicks ass. So much ass. It kicks so much ass. So there you have it. There is my April movie roundup. This movie came out on my birthday. I think I technically... Wait, did Godzilla and King Kong come out in March? Doesn't matter. I'm still calling this the April roundup. Should Roadhouse have technically been in here? I don't care. I already made a Roadhouse video, which you should watch. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell. If you're listening on your local podcast distributor, please do follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or check me out on Spotify to maybe make Spotify notice me more. And if you want to contact the program, you can email me at rubenuncut@gmail.com, or just do what all my haters do and leave some messages in my YouTube comments section. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever you are. Thank you.